if I subtract out this $5,200 and I leave the $11,000 in, it's business as usual, and it basically does the same thing. I support what you're doing. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it work.
So you want to, Carol?
Well, I think you have to remember, think two things. One, the response time is going to be totally different for Luzio.
Yes.
Okay, and if you're the one sitting there and somebody's having a heart attack and starting to go, you're not going to really give a damn about that budget line. You know, that's true for all of us, okay? The second thing is that the ambulance also generates income. And that income, I tried to find a relationship, just for preliminary, between their wages and the insurance. There wasn't a relationship. I got to look at calls and go back. But you know, there's some years the insurance has been comparable to the money they spend on wages. Other years it's been a heck of a lot higher, and I don't believe it's ever. In one year it's been slightly lower. And so, you know, we're getting money in. I think that the fact that it doesn't always match from year to year is because, you know, you may have had a call at the end of the year and the insurance bill got paid the following year. So it's tough as far as that goes. What are we billing out for calls when we bill people?
What do you mean? We're doing, what did I add?
So we, Linda,
hold on.
it's $250 now.
$250, okay. And what's the going rate?
We just got a bill from Deluzio for an $833 transport. I can't tell if that's an anomaly or not.
But what we were going on before was that Anton had found out what the rate that the insurances would pay was, and that was what we were billing. So we were much lower, but I think I talked to Carol the other day, and she thought that we probably should go up because she thought the rates probably had gone up, so we would be getting more if we billed more.
Okay, and I want to.
That's right.
Yeah. I hate to put it this way, but I really honestly want to separate out the value of life from the budget for right now. Okay? Because we could throw $1 million at this and we could offer superlative care and a helicopter. But we're not going to do that. So I hate to be the cold, heartless guy, which is usually Rothschild, right? But I will be in this example and just say, let's focus on the numbers and not on the...
So my next thing that I wanted to bring up is Linda and I had talked to Carol and thought it would be a fair assumption to raise the billables by $100 to $350 for a base rate.
Okay, then I have to throw one other wrench into the conversation.
Sure.
And I'm going to insist that we not discuss, well, I'll leave it to you guys, but I ask you, should we even be discussing revenues? Given the budget process for the state of New Hampshire, we can't consider them.
Right.
I think what we ought to do is actually at this meeting, we should be allowing Jesse to complete his presentation rather than take apart the budget for him.
I think you missed the point.
Yeah.
I think the point with the revenue was the fact that, you know, yes, the budget may be going up, but it brings money back in as well. So that has to be considered in terms of the bottom line. So,
Right. And the second part of the bottom line I was going to add to offset that is I was going to ask if we could increase our billable to help offset this $5,000.
But it actually doesn't in government.
Of course not.
It doesn't.
Well,
Because when we go for the budget, and we are under a thing that we can only go up on our budget 3%. So every year, unless it's voted on at the deliberative session or added to it at the deliberative session. I haven't even figured what that was yet, but this is fine. 3%.
Correct. Sure. Who calls on me?
To Chris's point, last year we spent $10,000 in labor and $7,500 for Deluzio.
Okay.
Right? So if we're going to have better coverage on the weekend, where we were probably paying Deluzio $7,500, we're going to reduce his bill because our guys are now going to cover that.
Correct.
So it therefore shouldn't go from $7,500 to $11,000. It should be something less than the $7,500. I mean, in practicality, because now we're not calling him.
Correct.
Now, that would be my question.
That's an average, Tom, that you're looking at.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean,
I'll tell you what, I agreed Joel before Joel raised me again.
Just a question of time.
As he should.
Let's go ahead, let me speak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was speaking back here. I can see what you're saying, Tom's saying about lowering the amount. First of all, that really is something that is totally almost different when we're talking about Friday and Saturday night.
Right.
It's not just Deluzio is picking up the calls on Friday and Saturday. Yes, it has happened. Some of the problem is that people that are around a lot, like all week and in the night, and the weekend comes and they'd like to have a break, and the people that are home, they can do it. You're getting a break of people that are getting to the point where they're saying, I don't know if I want to be served another 2 years, because I'm tired.
Yeah,
Even
and,
though we're having new people come on, I'm going to tell you as an older member, you go through the periods of that when there's a lot of calls, and you're walking out of dinners, you're walking away from your family, your friends, and you need a break.
yeah, and it's a very low rate of pay, as you know, for,
Well, and also when Deluzio comes out and picks up the patient, they're billed by Deluzio.
Oh, yeah.
that's right, we pay them and then Deluzio bills them.
They really would.
Yes. They pay for
I
the
think what
ride.
you're doing is a good idea. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying I think it's a great idea, okay? But,
So do you want me to take that money out of the Deluzio line?
no, I don't want you to do anything, but I would.
Would everybody feel better if we buried that somewhere, and maybe you could help me bury that?
No, honestly, I think, let's work through this and see if there's any other points that may be a little contentious, and we'll come back to that question. So if to Tom's point, if we're gonna do the 5,200 extra to encourage people to cover more,
Right.
then maybe a couple $1,000s comes off a paramedic. Maybe it doesn't have to be a 1-for-1, but then we'll get closer to that target, which is us ending up with a budget that does not exceed 3%. So that's kind of where we're shooting.
That's where it has to go.
But,
Okay.
well, not necessarily. I mean, we could slash some roads and we could increase ambulance if we wanted. So go ahead, and I think you just need to continue through. We talked paramedic expense.
I think what we should do is get everybody's first things down anyway and see where we are.
Correct, because if you look in, we're not finished this year, but if you look at the average wage that we spend out of our regular wages without adding this $5,200, we generally pretty close, but generally under.
And you dropped the number of categories for 2016 proposed.
We did. We dropped quite a few that weren't relevant as much anymore, like oxygen. The new protocols don't call for you to use oxygen anymore as much. I mean, before it was every call, now it's 1 in 20 calls. So, I mean, that was a formerly $1,200 expense that I put for $250 because we haven't cracked the tank on an oxygen bottle since I've been there. 4 months now, so.
Your average for that paramedic line for 4 years has been $7,500, 75 and change.
Okay.
And you want to go up 5,000. 3.9% of that line is 5,000 bucks.
Okay.
So if you brought down your paramedic expense to what your average would be,
Okay.
you're right where you belong.
Perfect. I've never done a budget before.
Carol, you're doing, well, just my question. Don't we keep sliding down the line by line?
Yep.
Okay.
I have a quick question on that. I understand,
If we can we do this one and then we'll try to hold questions till we get through the presentation? But go ahead.
Go ahead.
the Deluzio thing, so they're billing, if they transport, they bill the person they transport, they bill us
for a paramedic.
And do we bill anybody for that?
No, we can't.
Then not them, not if they pick it up.
Not if they pick up the patient, no.
So,
They get paid twice, we get paid.
so we're dipping us here?
No.
No, because we're paying for the paramedic, which we don't
Okay, so
have.
the paramedic is one bill and the transport is the second bill.
Correct,
All
Right.
these
So
guys.
higher standard of service, we're talking about.
correct.
Yeah, I like that.
It seemed pretty lucrative. All right.
Okay. So that's it, insurance billing, 2015, 750, requested 750 stays the same.
Yeah.
No, you're increasing conferences, dues, and subscriptions, $100. Anything particular for that, or?
Conferences, dues, and subscriptions, it was 0 to 3. Now you want $100.
Just make it.
You want to put a page on it? So let's say.
Yes, there you go.
I didn't remember what the great times you should get this.
Okay, that's all right. That's not a significant
You have to
number.
bring the things here.
Average is $100.
Sorry. Yeah, because there was a 250 and a 125. Yes, so
Well, for some reason it wasn't requested last year, but that's okay.
or spend. So what we could probably take that $100 out.
Okay.
Training, we're going to need all of that, maybe a little bit more. Training's going to be kind of tough this year.
You were 2,000 last year or excuse me, 3,000 last year and 2,000 this year.
Yeah.
Think you're going to be trained up. You are bringing a lot of people on.
I have 7 people total coming.
How many research do you need?
There's no longer research. Research disappeared into the blue air. They decided that the National Registry was losing too many EMTs due to research. So now, in order to research, it's just your hours,
Nothing.
nothing. No.
And the next line, you
Drop. That's really scary.
No, but now you have to pay for the hours. Don't worry, it's just still billing you for it.
supplies have dropped from $2,000 budget last year to $1,200, which seems to be pretty much in line with your averages.
Yep.
Personal protection goes from 0 to 500.
What's personal protection?
What's that?
The
No.
suits. PPE,
Okay.
which that's going to have to do.
Was that previously under
So I'm gonna
the
try to-
budget line?
I'm going to work with everyone to see if we can work the rest of it out this year.
Was PPE previously under something else? Is that why?
There
You must have always bought it, I would think.
there wasn't really in a line
Okay.
decipherable.
Okay. Ambulance equipment and repair, $500 last year, $500 this year.
Yep.
Ambulance repairs, 2,500 to 1,500. That's a drop.
That's kind of close to that.
Yeah, historically,
Should be all right.
okay. Cars get better with age.
Yeah. Like the line.
Radio repair, $500. You guys actually have used your radio repair before. Is that for reprogramming and setting up new codes and stuff like that?
Yeah.
We sometimes see that line item and there's never anything.
Yeah, we've used it quite a bit this year.
Okay, ambulance lease, that's if you, I guess we're not paying off any leases. Oxygen, you explained, goes down from $500 to $100. And new equipment goes from $1,000 down to $250. So,
What is that new equipment? What do you mean by new? Not much for 250. No.
Yeah.
What is it? You're not talking about the.
I'm not talking about expendables, I'm talking about like purchasing new capital equipment when we don't need anything because everything's good to go at the moment. If it was an expendable, i.e. bandages, splints, whatever, that to me would be up here in the ambulance supply line for $1,200. Equipment would be a new stethoscope, or, that would actually probably be a supply, but like, a capital piece of hard equipment that you
That
would keep.
isn't going to get used up.
Correct, a non-consumable.
You requested oxygen last year, 500, did you use any? Why are you requesting 100?
We did use oxygen. We pay a lease every year.
We have to pay a lease on it, so whether we use it and go beyond
It's
that.
under the spent, it said it was there also, I just didn't understand.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to.
So in with the way the changes have been made, I don't know that we may even need to be in the lease. We may just buy it as we need it, because we use it so seldom.
How long, when you buy a bottle of it, how long is it good for? Is it indefinite, or does it go bad over time? If you
Well,
don't
the
use it,
tank will go bad before the oxygen.
it can be held, in other words.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not-
So I go back to what I said before, if $1,000 is roughly 3%, you can bring it all out of the one line item, out of the paramedic expense, and you're there, the rest of it can flush.
Yeah. Tom's doing some figures while I'm still trying to figure out how to open the calculator on my phone. But just conceptually, what he did was, he said, okay, well, let's have the $5,200 you want to do to the average.
Right.
As opposed to last year's budget number, so that brings that number to 15,700. He reduces the amount of FICA and Medicare, because that's 6% of the total, that goes down to 1035.
6.6%.
And then he actually says, well, let's not use 11,000 for Deluzio. Let's say it's the average, the 7523 number.
There you go.
And what that does is, that's knocking $5,000 out of the budget. Still providing the incentive, which I personally think is a great idea.
So what, I think it's a great
Want to run
idea.
those by me again?
Great
please?
idea. And I think,
Well,
yeah,
It's just covered.
But I think conceptually, I think maybe if we look at the next round with that kind of thought in mind, we'd be very close to the 3%, definitely under actually.
so what do you want me to put on in?
Oh, yes.
On the budget?
Yes, and I did have one other suggestion for revenue. I'm just gonna throw this out there. Totally just an idea. It's up to you people. I'm saying it's something that could be done. I don't wanna make this decision, but we could have a town ordinance to bill for no transfer. However, Medicare and Medicaid insurance companies will not pay for that. So it would be whatever. I was proposing $25 or $50, a small nominal fee, just to discourage overuse and abuse of the system. We're not having that at the moment. We've had it quite a bit in the past. And I think that would be something for you guys to talk about.
When you say non-transport, I'm a little bit.
Well, you get a call, and you get a call.
Let me ask the question. You call for your service.
Right.
And you respond.
Correct.
You're responding assuming that you're going to transport them somewhere.
Correct.
And you don't transport them. You
Correct.
get this, the person needs your service.
Correct. And then we cannot, at that point, we cannot bill them. You see what I'm saying?
Except Jesse, there's a problem with that.
What's that?
If you look at the people that have done this in the past, most of them are on a system of some sort. They're just gonna say, well, I'm not gonna pay $25 out of my pocket, I'm gonna be transported.
That's
Whether
fine.
I need to or not.
That's fine, because that creates revenue.
It's probably a level of detail that's not appropriate for this meeting.
My question was, that is what I'm throwing out there, because in instances, not just here, but throughout the country, there's system-wide abuse of people misusing services because there's no disincentive to do so. gone out many times for just general public aid, which is what we do, I understand, but how much do you do at no fee? Because every time the truck rolls, it's still costing money.
Costing the taxpayer.
Well, you don't need an ordinance to, for that, I mean, that's just a policy.
Not sure.
Again, I think that might be a level of detail that
That's you guys.
we should push along. It's probably true that we're ready to move on.
Yep.
I think so, and you have our, at least my feedback. And I think some good ideas came out of this. Other than that, don't feel like we put you in the hot seat, that is the hot seat.
Should that go on your punch list, Chris, on you know, the issue?
Like, the idea
Oh,
of
that
the
is
weekend
very
guys,
nice. I've got it, John, it's gonna take.
that's terrific idea.
You gotta redo this budget.
That's what I know, what am I supposed to put on the budget?
It came in the same as last.
What, you brought in and brought in?
It'll be 32,000.
When do you guys?
I got 319.
Yeah, whatever.
I've been looking
Originally,
for something
29.
that was
No, he's
done
underneath
last
whatever we
week.
got the other day.
I didn't get to it.
So we figure we're going through 2 rounds, everybody's coming.
Yeah, so I'll just put this one.
You got that number right, Carol?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
We'll,
And I'll put maybe
we
where
can
it
massage it a little, Jesse.
Yep.
We'll make a massage it.
And we'll print those out.
How much?
So that is.
Because like Tom, do you guys present?
No, I already did it.
Okay, I think we're ready for Kim.
Thanks a lot, Jesse.
Get that seat warmed up? Get out of here.
Great job.
Thank you, sir.
No, the seat, sitting there.
Yeah.
Can we get copies of that or fire?
I don't know if Carol made any copies of mine or not.
I'll go make some.
We'll burn them real quick. And you can start.
I didn't make Jesse do
That's a firefighter, you actually said it was burning.
It's a joke, yeah? It's a joke.
Good job.
It's your job.
That's not someone else.
It's your job.
I didn't know there was one in the car. Her car.
That's not as good.
It's parked over in the no dig zone.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you walk down.
What was that idea you said?
Did you bring
What
it
was
up?
the idea you suggested for the?
Not good.
It was raincoat.
Oh, what he was
I don't
saying.
know.
While we're waiting,
Yeah, 12 people walking under that umbrella.
at some point, the debris is gonna have to be cleaned out again.
Insurance
Go away
doesn't cover
from
that.
dam.
Yes.
Evidently, there must be some clipping going on,
Somebody called from
there's travel going down.
just leave an adjustment on the house.
Well, it's what it's done, is when you get the repeat offender, they'll call.
How did we do that last time?
Here's my son, actually picked up my
Linda, what's the total budget for 2016? It's not there. There it is.
On what?
Fire department.
It's not added up.
No, that's all right.
On the back.
On the back, it's
On the back.
2016.
not have it, no, he didn't give it to me, I'd have to look, we'd have to.
No, that's fine, I got it right here.
Yeah, it's not that.
Just brought a couple other color things, that's all.
It's about $1,700 more for the fire department, and the forestry should be about $100 more. Off the top of my head.
You're correct. That was about a 2% increase for the fire department.
2?
Yep.
Is that what it is?
1.99 if you want to be exact, though.
Kim, do you have some general remarks you want to make about what you're trying to accomplish with these budgets?
Trying to stay in a holding pattern. When someone can come up and tell me exactly what's going to happen next year, then I can give you an absolute budget. But not knowing how many calls we're going to have, what's going to break, what isn't going to break, it's kind of hard to come up with a whole bunch.
So it looks you're gonna go for another fire ad grant?
We put in the paperwork for one, and it should be, I believe, about $1,800 again. And if we don't receive the funding for the grant, then we'll just won't spend it.
Right.
What's that grant for?
This year will be for a Mark I portable pump. It's a small, high-pressure pump. Along with fittings and appliances to go with it.
Okay, what's in the equipment?
Whatever breaks,
Is this replacement?
yeah. For instance, this year and last year we paid for the replacement Scott models out of that. We buy turnout gear through that, things of that nature. Some new equipment is things modernized, but most of it is replacement.
Kim, you mentioned the hose for that too, didn't you?
That's under the forestry.
Okay.
It's the forestry hose that's getting old.
Yep, sorry.
Is there a schedule for replacing turnout gear?
It has to be done every 10 years, whether it's worn or not.
I get it. I just didn't know if there was a, you track, Bob's turnout gear is now 8 years old, so we have to replace 3 sets this year, and it's gonna be.
We're going to have a start coming up next year.
Okay.
And then on top of that is new people come in. We've had to buy 4 new sets of turnout gear this year.
Gotcha.
You have 2 sets of turnout gear, correct, Kim, that have not been turned back in?
Yeah.
And one person, I guess you guys talked to, just haven't been able to get hold of to get the stuff back. He keeps putting you off, basically. And
Yeah.
There are some other underlying issues with that. And I think you were looking for an answer as to whether or not it should be just written off, or whether there could get that equipment back.
We were told by the selectmen last year not to go there anymore. That would be the gentleman next door to the fire station.
Yep, I stand by that.
Okay.
Well, it would be difficult to go further without damaging a reputation.
I understand.
One that might well deserve being damaged, but that's not how we operate.
Not in this meeting, I understand.
I have a question. As of September, you're at $18,000 rounding off, and that's the 9th month of the calendar year, of the fiscal year? So that's, I'm just trying to understand, if the request was 64,000, and you're gonna annualize out at 25,000, why would that be?
There's a lot of money that hasn't been spent yet. The bills for the Scott models isn't in there yet.
What's the Scott model? How much-
That's the models that hold our air for our breathing apparatus.
That's 15,000.
That's the last line.
Okay.
And labor seems a little low, that's just because you haven't had a lot of fires this year?
Yeah, we're down. And we also, we've ordered 4 sets of gear, we've only been billed so far on 2 sets.
And those are 3,000.
And those are not in this piece of paper. Those are roughly between $1,700 and $1,800.
Oh, you buy
That's-
4, right?
We're buying 4.
But 2 of them been up.
2 have already been billed. They were billed after this was printed out and paid. And we're waiting right now, the other 2 have been ordered, and we don't get billed for them until we receive them.
So we got somewhere around $18,000 added into this, which, we're still low for this time of year, but not as far off as
Well,
it
it looks like
appears.
it's gonna annualize out at 42,000.
Yeah, and
50,000.
The numbers on that sheet are as of 9/8, so that really doesn't include much of September. If you look at the sheet for 9/29, they're a little bit closer to the numbers that I'm using.
that's correct.
There is some big discrepancies, a couple of things are quite a bit under on that sheet. So like, what you've got fire department wages should really be about 12/6.
Every 2 weeks, we do a check, so.
Right, and fire department new equipment is quite a bit higher relatively speaking.
Yeah,
And we've got a $1,200 bill sitting right now waiting to be paid for training that we received last weekend.
Take
The street sheet.
And you never know how many people will want for training next year either.
We don't know what's available either.
Right.
That's part of the problem also.
okay. So, between the 2, we're looking at about a 1.9. I don't hear anything drastic, crazy that jumps out at me. You guys?
Other than if you're gonna fall in within your budget or under budget, why are we looking for more?
Because I never know what's gonna happen. You know, if we lose the transmission in the truck tomorrow, there's $6,000 or more.
We didn't know what was gonna happen last year neither. I mean,
We were locked out.
and you bought Scott bottles this year for $15,000. What do you plan on buying for $15,000 next year?
Turnout gear is gonna be the start of it.
Well, for that, that's where I'd like to see that schedule.
And also, if the new truck passes, then there's gonna have to be outfitted extra stuff on that also.
Well, that would be in the warranty.
Yeah. So, what I think my comment will be on the new equipment line, and this is to help get it closer to being even. If we could see how many sets of turnout gear, if you buy them every couple of years, then 15 of them are gonna need replaced. 2 or 3 are gonna need replaced tomorrow, because they're gonna.
But the trouble is, when we started buying them, we didn't have the 10-year plan. So we were buying 7 and 8 at a whack.
That's okay, but let's see what the count is of how many are hitting the 10-year mark, because you guys get denied from training if you show up with old gear, correct?
Correct. Anything over 10 years old, they won't let you on.
Right, you can't play. So there is, I get it, I just would like to see that number refined.
And the other problem is, if we get hazardous materials spilled on them or something, it takes them out of service if we can't clean them.
I get
It's
it.
things like that. So there's things that are totally unexpected that we have no real way of going with.
There's lots of uncertainty in these emergency service budgets, we understand that. I think the way for us to proceed tonight is to accept this budget as submitted and ask you for an inventory of turnout gear with the expiration dates. That's all. And we'll take it from there, we'll put this in to the computer and chuck forward to the next round of contestants. Make sense?
Now, the other thing we'll have to do also, if we're walking away from that equipment, there's some electronics that'll have to be replaced.
D10. I think, like I said, we put this into the system now, And when we have you back for the next time, we'll probably be asking you questions in more detail. And you've got an idea of what we're gonna be looking for? Excellent.
That was kind of painless.
List of the turnout gear and its ages and whatever else we need.
After ripping on Jesse so hard, I'm kinda out of the wind. I didn't have anything left but him.
Jesse and his crazy idea. Gee.
Trying to make things more efficient.
Other comments about either of those two budgets? Do you guys